Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will continue our discussion of Chapter 7 of Freemasons for Dummies, The Symbols of Freemasonry.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our own very worshipful brother David Colbeth, who's a member of King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Brother Craig Graham, who's a member of Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. And I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243 here in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And so previously we started our discussion of symbols. I think we covered a whole 2 in our last episode. So at the rate of 2 an episode for the 90 symbols that he mentions, I think we should round out the next couple of years in discussing the symbols of Masonry. But just to dive right back into it, so the next, after the number 3, which we discussed briefly last week, the next sort of thing he mentions are tracing boards, which are I delivered the 3rd degree lecture in our lodge, and I look at the tracing board as my little memory jogger of what I'm supposed to be talking about. It has this sort of this for the given degree. It'll have the symbols on it that pertain to that degree, and a couple others that are probably used in some other jurisdiction that we don't use. And it helps me I have my little pointer, and I point at the thing and go, whatever the hourglass is a symbol of time, or a symbol of human life, blah 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 blah, and enables us to do it that way. We don't, in our lodge at least, we don't have them always displayed. We basically break them out for a degree and then put them away again, and break them out if we have another degree. Craig, I know we were talking before the episode started. You said in your lodge room they're permanently on display. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's 3 of them, one for each degree, and it's so the one for the master's degree is in the east by the worship master's chair, and the 2nd degree is on the west by the senior warden. 3rd degree is up on the wall behind the junior warden in the south. So they're kind of appropriately laid out, and they're if anybody. They're used in Canadian ritual. If anybody watching this is an English Freemason, they'd be very, very, very familiar with what's on them. They're fairly common. Like we were discussing in the kind of our electronic green room before we started recording this episode here, that I've always assumed the tracing board that has a very strong importance in English and some other European rituals, but we have a less of a use of them. Like in my lodge, we just have these frame pictures we use that we don't really refer to as tracing boards, but just rather sort of job aids, I guess, if you will, for getting that part of the lecture done. But we do that much the same thing. There's our we point and illustrate and bring up the symbols one by one and let everyone know what they are.
Yeah, we actually just moved within the building that we meet in the Nile Shrine building. We just moved to a new room that's just been renovated, and the walls are 3 of the 4 walls are covered with floor to ceiling curtains now. And so we were talking about getting the tracing board symbols painted on the walls behind the curtains, so that like for the 1st degree we could pull back the curtain in that section and have all the symbols there on the wall. And I don't know how we would do it, but it seems really cool.
I fully support that. I think that's an outstanding idea. I would that's if I were in charge, which we all love to say in our moments, but yeah, I would that's the way I would do it, so that not only are they available, but even sitting in lodge, if those drapes are open, then everybody has a constant reminder of what they're a part of.
Would you think it's more effective to have curtains to open them and they're hidden, or would it be better just to have them always displayed? It's got me thinking now. I like the dramatic effect.
I think the intention was, the people who were talking about that, was to use them like we use the tracing boards now as for the rituals lectures. That said, I like, whatever, some lodges have the different working tools out or not out for the different degrees, and you could I could see that being a similar thing where you, for whatever the first degree, you just have that section of the wall exposed, and I don't, I,
Yeah.
it would require more thought.
Again, the lodge room that we use where I attend lodge here, that's how it's done in Canadian working, is when the lodge is opened in a particular degree, that these boards are shrouded, and then they're opened when the lodge is open in that particular degree.
Oh,
And then so there's a
interesting.
little bit of a ritual for the person occupying the chair closest to them. They open them or close them at the appropriate time when the lodge is called on or off in a particular degree.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often thought too, if we were to paint them for our lodge room in a very large format, to not paint them directly on the wall, to get a large canvas and put them on a canvas, so that if you ever needed to renovate, now you haven't lost all that beautiful artwork, or potentially beautiful artwork. Well, if I did it, it wouldn't be maybe so beautiful, but but it's funny, just in that vein, I've often thought, even if it wasn't, art, super high quality artistic talent, if it's I call it a 10-foot job, if you stand back 10 feet and it still looks pretty good, which most of us would be, couldn't we just take a projector and project that image up on the wall and then sketch it out? I mean, I can trace really well and shade, it's like a coloring book at that point. So it seems like maybe a long weekend job or a few hours job to just trace it out and paint it out and it'd be done. It wouldn't have to take 6 months to have an artist come in and fashion. I'm sure you've seen the Scottish Rite in Seattle, their building. It was an old 24-hour fitness gym, and the racquetball courts are where the lodge rooms are, and they made them beautifully appointed inside, and then they had an artist come in and paint the walls. And when you first walk in, you would say that they're three-dimensional, but they're not. It's really, really beautiful. All the pillars and things. Yeah.
That's the Scottish Rite building.
Scottish Rite in Seattle, yeah.
Okay.
In Shoreline, actually, not Seattle, but Shoreline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So I will say, in my extremely valid opinion, no doubt, that I don't know that the tracing board in my mind is a symbol so much as a method of conveying symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is, I guess on some level it is a symbol, but it's more of a teaching aid. It's here are the symbols, they're displayed on this tracing board kind of thing. Is that
he alludes to it, that before they had tracing boards, often they would scribe the symbols on the ground, on the floor of the room they were, and then it was part of an apprentice and the new guys, the stewards, whoever, to go and to clean it up. And I've heard that happens in military lodges and other places where they'll have an impromptu lodge meeting where they might draw the symbols on the ground, which I've thought that'd be kind of fascinating to try, to put some stuff on the ground and try that. But that could be, if you wanted to make the leap from the symbolic tracing board of history, which was the floor or the space in which you worked, the craft, has been transformed into a object itself. So the tracing board itself represents the lodge room to some extent, maybe. Pretty thin, but
I think you're right, because if you look at again, going back to the tracing boards I've seen in English and Canadian ritual, they're quite striking, and the symbols are arranged in a logical fashion around them, and each of them kind of does a good job of setting the tone for that degree, and also sort of especially in the second degree, kind of the movement through it. Although to be honest with you, having gone through the experiences that I have, are using the winding staircase on the carpet was quite instructive, and I long retained that. And I've even heard in some places lodges go even further to actually having staircases that drop down or come out of the floor, or something theatrical like that. So it depends on how far. I mean, that's real commitment there when you're doing things like that. But I've never seen one yet.
Yeah, our lodge has we have 3 sets of stairs that are about, I don't know, 3 inches high each, that we store in a closet. And on the degree day, we take them out, and they have the, like the 7 liberal arts and sciences on the flight of 7 stairs. But there's, whatever, we take these stairs and then you get to the end of it, you got to step back down again, kind of thing. I did visit a lodge once in Portland, Oregon, that had in the lodge room, in one corner, there was a set of 3, 5, and 7 steps that went up to what would be the second floor. There was a balcony around the second floor. And then as you walked around that balcony, there were the different orders of architecture, the 5 columns along the balcony, and then some of the other symbols of the degree. And then you went back down the other side. So as they were doing the second degree lecture, they actually walked along the balcony and said, whatever, this is the Ionic, this is the Doric, and that sort of thing. And I never got to see a degree in that room, but I could picture it in my head, and it looked really cool in my head.
Yeah. I'll drive down with you sometime and we'll go.
Sounds good.
Let me know.
Deal.
Yeah.
So that said,
one last question about the tracing board, because we can never let it go. Just move on.
I tried.
Such a Masonic thing, isn't it?
We were talking in the green room, blue room before the show started that what we're going to be talking about next was, of course, the tracing board, and we looked at some of the symbols on there, and I said, "Oh, it's the first degree symbols," and Matt looked at me wryly and said, "No, idiot. It's more than it's all of them." No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. I saw it in his eyes, but he didn't say it.
Good thing we're doing this on Zoom.
And so I posed as a question: should we have a singular tracing board with all symbols on it, or should there be individual tracing boards for each of the degrees? Obviously, the short answer might be, this individual makes more sense because that's all they're learning. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea of having them all there. A little mystery.
The teaser for the next episode, so to speak.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know. I always feel it depends, because I guess historically you could have done it so many different ways. I mean, if we were some primitive society and we were doing this by torchlight on the wall of a cave, and we have somebody sort of hiding the other, here's the bison symbol, but you can't see the woolly mammoth symbol, just they're not ready for that one. Does somebody hide that, throw a bear skin over it, or do we uncover it and you sort of say, what's that? And it's like, well, we're going to leave now because you're not ready for that one yet. It's so part of me sort of thinks maybe it doesn't matter. It all goes back to how it's presented. You can do it either way, but if it's all presented well and meaningfully, then great. If not, then you've lost the effect of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a lodge near where I am here they have, I hesitate to call them tracing boards, but they are works of art that they actually commissioned a local artist to do, and they're, I don't know, 2 meters by 4 meters. They're big, and they hang on the walls.
Wow! And
there's 3 of them, one for each degree, and but they're there all the time. Like, they're always out. They're not concealed by curtains, like you were saying, or put away when they're not doing degrees or whatever. So they're always there. So yeah, I could see some entered apprentice looking at the Master Mason one and going, "Hey, what's up with that thing?" But yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel both ways about it. If one had, and probably also if one had a good, high quality, beautiful tracing board, one would want to have it out all the time, like these commissioned works of art, as opposed to what my lodge has, which is the canvas one that gets rolled up and is cracked, and that's seen better days.
It's been dropped. It's been stepped on. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. My pointer no longer has an end to it. It's just the piece of wood ends. There's no metal point on the end of it anymore. So trying to move on here. So from tracing boards, he moves on to King Solomon's Temple, of which every lodge room is or should be a representation thereof, something along those lines. It's in the ritual somewhere, I'm sure. So the King Solomon's Temple is in the Bible. It's mentioned in the I forget which books of the Bible. Kings, I think, is one of them. I'm sure it's written in the book here.
Yep. Kings 6 and 7, Chronicles 3 and 4.
So, and it's a So it's the construction and aspects of the temple are that we use are straight out of the biblical representation as far as I can tell. It is, I've heard of the temple / lodge room being a symbol of everything from the universe and the world to a human being to the whole microcosm macrocosm thing and everything in between. Do you guys have thoughts on the King Solomon's temple / lodge room symbolry?
Well, that's sort of a general question I had. I forget, this is a long time ago, but I was in a lodge somewhere and I saw their volume of sacred law, and it had a beautiful section in it on what King Solomon's temple looked like, at least according to the people that had, published this. And I don't know that we've ever, if archaeologists have sort of ever definitively figured out what the temple looked like what its actual size. I mean, I would imagine by the foundations they can sort of tell what the general shape of it was, but what its size was or what the sort of the internal configuration was, that's all been lost to. I think a lot of that has been lost to history, but I'm always of the understanding that it would have resembled something very Egyptian in its decoration. Have you guys ever heard anything like that or about that?
I have heard something along those lines before that it would have been it's we picture it as Western Europeans as being more of a Greek um, family of architecture look to it, but that it would probably have been more. I mean, they were closer to Egypt than they were to Greece, right?
Yeah.
They were that would have been more of the vein that it would have been in. But I am not enough of a knowing what's going on about
Mhm.
that. And yeah, it's interesting. Like you read in our ritual, according it's got 2,906 pilasters and 1,400 columns and et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it describes this grandiose structure, but it also says it, in the Bible, it says it's like the size of a basketball court. And it's not it is not a huge structure. So
No.
yeah, it's hard to, sometimes I have a trouble marrying up the two images in my mind of
Well,
what
I
it would
mean,
look.
it definitely wasn't the mega church of its time. That's for certain. But no, the thing is, but you were addressing it differently a minute ago because you're asking, for thoughts on if we thought what the lodge room plus King Solomon's temple, what it all meant. You guys have both been to outdoor degrees, haven't you? Yeah,
Yes.
like because I know it's a there's a couple of places in Washington that do them, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So does it feel different to attend a meeting when you're, at a tiled lodge meeting out in the woods and you actually, rather than a painted ceiling, you actually have the canopy of heaven over you. Does it enhance the experience at all?
I felt like it did. I've been to a couple. We had one. They used to do a torchlight second degree. That was so it was outside outdoors at night, and the again it was obviously torchlit. And I've been to an outdoor first degree and a couple outdoor third degrees, and I found it to be very solemn and I don't know what the word is, the connectedness to the world instead of being in our usual hideaway. I found to be powerful, like you were saying, but I'm supposedly ancient Masons met on a high hill or a low dale, right? So
That's
it's
right.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. It
David,
was,
do you have thoughts?
I've actually never been to an outdoor degree.
Oh,
I don't know. It's not necessarily by design. It just hasn't ever really aligned with my ability, permits, and my. uh, yeah, and I've talked about doing some things like that. I've often talked about just doing a candlelight degree, if you will, within our building, midnight degree or whatever. I think that'd be kind of fun because we don't often. We just had this discussion in our little group that we talked about the lights and how we should do it. And I remember when I was master 12 years ago, the first time, I thought I had read Observing the Craft, and I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to take some initiatives here. And so at the opening a lodge, I would have the lights down. And within 5 minutes, one of those senior Masons came in and, whoa, it's dark in here, turn the lights on. They won't turn the lights on. I went over and turned it back off again. And they came back and turned it. It was this battle of, and I thought, I thought I'm the martial master. I thought I'm in charge of this stuff. But I fell to the will of the lodge, and we kept the lights on, and we have bright fluorescent lights. It's pretty bright. I don't know if do you subscribe to Emeth, Matt, to Cameron Bailey's? I don't know if you know about Emeth, Craig. It's one of our past grandmaster, Cameron Bailey. He writes a online paper called Emeth, EMETH. And we've talked about other podcasts and other things. I would highly recommend people to consider at least reading it. You don't have to subscribe. You can get to most everything without subscribing. There's some additional benefits if you do. I think it's less than $100 a year. But one of his messages he had a few weeks ago was about light in lodge and our lodge rooms. And he said, if you think about it, ancient Masons, before the electrical circuits were created, before electrical lights were created, how did they illuminate their spaces? With candles and lanterns. And he said, have you ever been in your lodge room and only had the 3 great lights on in some fashion? What if it was candlelight and not those electric lights that a lot of us flick on with a switch? What if it was a candlelight great lights? And if that's not enough, maybe you take something like put 3 in the south and 5 in the west and 7 in the east, candles to give you some more light. And some other options too. And so we were talking about that. I was saying how at the beginning of this year as master, I brought in some candles, some electric candles, and I put them on the altar. I said, well, guys, what do you think of this? We're going to give it a shot. And he said, and some of the guys said, well, I don't know how we can turn these on. We can figure out, because it was with a remote. You had to turn them on with a remote. And it was to me an excuse not to have these electric candles. And so I just didn't push it anymore. And so I was telling these guys, hey, if you want to do it, I will support you and encourage you and be, but I can't introduce it again.
My old lodge, my old lodge had a beautiful light in the ceiling overhead illuminating the volume of sacred law. Our current lodge building doesn't have that. And I've often thought what it would be like to have a meeting with only that light on, just that light, and the other. Yeah, because we actually use, burning candles in our lodge room, and just the 3 of them around. To me, there would be enough light there to conduct the meeting, not let the candidate trip over anything if we were moving one around. But even just to do just a regular meeting like that, I think would add a real ambiance that I often find sort of lacking to our meetings.
We have moved what I was able to do this year, and the brethren have accepted, is doing exactly that for our memorials in lodge, which is very brief in most cases for us. And so I've tried to make them a little bit more meaningful. And so when we move to memorial, we do it first thing as soon as we open. We don't wait. I said, I want to get that. If I'm going to cry and be sad, I want to be able to get that done and get out of the way. But we go immediately to no light except the altar light and the 3 great lights that are on, but they're just little electrical lights. And then I don't think I'm giving much away because we do it in the public for memorial services. So we normally would bring, the junior warden does his part and senior warden does his part, and master does their part, and we move on. But I was talking to our junior warden, I think the second one we had to do this year. And I said, he hadn't been there for the first one. So I said, oh, you just need to read the circumambulation. he didn't have it memorized. He said, just read it. I said, read the circumambulation. And then you put the acacia on the altar. And a beautiful mistake occurred. He came, as he stepped out of his station, he did the actual circumambulation. I didn't tell him to go around the altar, but he did it. And I thought, oh, is the senior warden going to do that? If he does, I'll do it. He didn't. And then I didn't want to make it obvious. And so I didn't the next time. But afterwards, I got the 3 of us together and I said, that was a beautiful mistake. That was amazing, powerful for me experience. And so now I said on the next one, unfortunately, we had another one. Let's do that. And so we did that. And then the officers stayed out at the altar. And then we had each of the lodge members grab an acacia, and they did our normal depository and then formed a circle around the altar in that shadowed light, and had the chaplain come and deliver the final prayer as a point within a circle. And it was just powerful. And then we have a moment of silence and maybe some short stories or good remembrances of the man, the brother, and then we move on. And it has really become a special way to honor those brothers that have gone without just wrapping the gavel and saying we're done.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, we have three memorials to do next meeting, but so we'll do that again. But
Nobody tackled the junior warden while he's walking between the master and the altar.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
So yeah, I think we're about to the end of the episode, and did we even finish one symbol? I don't know.
Yeah, we got the tracing board and Solomon's Temple. We didn't maybe finish it, but we got it.
We'll say we did. So, please let us know what we're missing about these symbols. I'm sure, as we've said before, there are layers upon layers on some of these, and they're, heck, even if you people are wrong, I want to hear your wrong opinions. So if you please let us know what your opinions are on these, and we'd be happy to discuss them. So with that, for Craig and David and the absent Steve and myself, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.